Okay, I'm going to just start out. I tuned up a little bit. I'm running a little late, and I apologize, but had a lot of things to do. This is a song that I wrote in 1977. It's called "The Lover of the Lord." And I was in the apartment on the second floor, there where the BBT things are. And what's that? Arch's apartment, that's right. Previously it was just kind of empty, and there was a devotee in there working, doing something on a typewriter. And I asked him if I could just sit here and work on some songs. So he said, sure. So I started working on this song, and then I got stuck. I went and took prasadam. I came back and laid down a little bit and fell asleep. And then when I woke up, there was a rhyming dictionary sitting on my guitar case, in a green case. And so I used it and finished the song. So I said, I figured Krishna helped me finish the song. He sent somebody there to give me a rhyming dictionary, which I still have, by the way. He's a kind and gentle soul, his heart is never cold, so peaceful and poetic, with a message true and bold. He's never seeking praise, so silent and so grave, and his transcendental love is the magic in his ways. And when I see his love, I know I got a long, long way to go. When will I taste the love that he is feeling inside? He's always meek and mild, with a warm and friendly smile, so simple in his living, singing all the while. He sings out Krishna's name, his glory and his fame, to serve his Lord and Master in pleasure or in pain. And when I see his love, I know I got a long, long way to go. When will I taste the love that he is feeling inside? Find no lust and greed in a heart that's pure and free. He's a lover of the Lord, and his life is ecstasy. He only dies to live, and living tries to give the happiness that's found in the sound of Krishna's name. And when I see his love, I know I got a long, long way to go. When will I taste the love that he is feeling inside? When I see his love, I know I got a long, long way to go. When will I taste the love that he is feeling inside? Thank you. Okay, was that an okay volume? It's not too loud? All right. This is going to be a little louder because I'm strumming. Now, this is called The Day My Body Dies. Will I hear your name the day my body dies, or see you there before me as the light fades from my eyes? In the grip of fear, will your memory appear and save me at the hour of my demise? Will I hear your name the day my body dies? You are the greatest hero for the fallen and the poor. No one else will do. The only plan I ever had was you. Time has stripped away my friends and family ties. Will I hear your name the day my body dies? Your power and the love you have to give. You can free me from this wheel of birth and death. Show me what it means to live. I have struggled to transcend, and it seems this struggle has no end. Don't let me fade into the dark. Please reach out and grab hold of my heart. Grab hold of my light fades from my eyes. Please get me out of here. Let your memory appear. Take me where there are no said goodbyes. Let me hear your name the day my body dies. Let me hear your name the day my body dies. Thank you. Okay, so this is a recent song that I wrote. It was going to be a humorous song originally. I was in New Vrindavan and I was trying to get internet service. So I was calling people, to get it. Here I am. They go, "What's your address?" And I told them. And then the guy said, "I can't seem to find that." He said, "What planet are you on?" And I said, "I'm on planet Limestone." Because Limestone is the little town where New Vrindavan is. And I live pretty close to the main little, store that's there. So anyways, I was going to write this song, but it turned out to be more of a serious song. Just thought things don't always turn out the way you start them, But I still called it Planet Limestone. message that we heard, Prabhupada's purity of purpose, was the power in his words. I remember we had nothing but our youth, and a hunger for knowledge in search of the truth. When the Hare Krishna farm was just a cabin and a shed, there were days we'd serve without concern for even board or bed. Let that light not fade away. Let our heart not be the thing that we betray. Guru Dev gave love of God. We will wither if we let it slip away. Together it's the debt we must repay. I'm back on planet limestone, living on the ridge. There's a road down to the temple, but we need to build a bridge. Way back we felt an urgency to help all mankind, so we gave our everything, left our differences behind. There was sacrifice and purity on the spiritual frontier. Now it's comfort and security and how to persevere. Good intentions, when misguided by fears that lie within, leave our purity of purpose blowing in the wind. Let the light not fade away. Let our heart not be the thing that we betray. Guru Dev gave love of God. We will wither if we let it slip away. Together it's the debt we must repay. I wish you had told me that in the first song. Okay. All right. Okay, I was told the bass is a little boomy. Sure, yeah. Feedback over there. Yeah, sorry. You can't have it out in front of the speaker like that. Okay, I'll figure it out here. Let me mute this. Okay, that's better. Well, thank you for tolerating that. We didn't do a sound check. So. This sounds like there's not enough bass, but is everybody doing okay? All right. Good. Well, thank you very much. So that last song was really about self-examination, that we have to examine what we're doing and why we're doing it throughout our spiritual life. And that's all that was about. It's the job of the artist to bring these things up. stronger there. Moonlight dancing on the water through a canopy of trees. I am drifting down the river like a songbird on the breeze. Reflections of the starry heavens shine like diamonds in the deep. If I should seek this apparition in cool dark waters, I will sleep. A soft voice beckons me upstream. This a woman's love no man has ever won. Don't let her veil of glitter sway me. Lord, not my will, but yours be done. Lord, not my will, but yours be done. As your love carries me, I let the world drift by. I hold on to the one thing that is mine. The symbol means to reach my destiny. The holy name flowing constantly. This is the sing-along part. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. One more time. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. This bow, your rays of mercy shine upon me. They dissipate this earthly dream. I am drifting into daybreak. The fog is lifting off this stream. The fog is lifting off this stream. This boat will someday sail beyond the waves of time to the sea of Radha Krishna's love divine, where we were meant to taste that nectar sweet and pure. Have mercy on this fallen troubadour. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Thank you. Let's hear it for Dugdapon, my sound man. Yes. Thank you, Dugdapon. Okay, well, in the early days, I had given away my guitars, of course, when I joined the movement, because they were material. And then when I was in Columbus, Ohio, I was in New Vrindavan first, then I went to Columbus, Ohio. And when I was there, at one point, they sent me into the basement to get something. And when I was down there, I saw this guitar case. So when I came up, I said, "Hey, there's a guitar down there." And the temple commander said, "Do you know how to play?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, go get it. We'll use it in the kirtans." So I did. And then I wrote Lord Chaitanya's Moon is Rising after a few weeks. And then Kirtananda Swami came to do a radio show, interview. And he heard me play the song, and he said, "I want you to come with me tomorrow morning to this radio thing and play that song." So I did, and that was my beginning of writing devotional songs. Many years ago. So I guess I should probably do that song. I was going to do a different one, but yeah, that was the kind of like the road show in the beginning was before Vishnu John Maharaj came and made it more dramatic, more of a dramatic road show. It was really just we would go to a college. I would play, open up with this song and some chanting, then Maharaj would give a lecture, then we'd pass out prasadam and preach to people and give out books. That was kind of the original idea of the roadshow. Then it got more, theatrical, as they say.
We're singing in the street, telling everyone we meet we're going home. We're going home. There's a golden moon overhead now. We must search Chaitanya somehow. He's the golden avatar. Spreads the name of Krishna far to every town, to every single town. Join me. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. This world is dark and full of sorrow, but there will come a bright tomorrow when we sing the holy name in praise of He who came for everyone, for each and everyone. Lord Chaitanya's moon is rising. Oh, it's not at all surprising that we're singing in the street, telling everyone we meet to come on home. Yes, we're going home.
right, well, thank you. So that is the mercy of Prabhupada.
You have one more for us?
I could have one more if we have time.
Well, we're really running short of time because we started a little late. But Mangalananda is going to be playing again at 2 o'clock sharp. So he's like filled with so much nectar here. Tell your friends that aren't here to please come and join in at 2 o'clock, 2:30. And let's give him another round of applause. That was tremendous. Fantastic. We do have to keep moving along because Artik starts at 12, so there's hardly any room for...
I just want to say that
go
I'm
ahead.
very honored to be here playing for the devotees. Thank you.
Right. And we appreciate. Setup, same setup. All right. Now we have a little duty here. The next speaker is Svarupa Prabhu, who's going to be speaking on the asana. So if those in the back there, we need to kind of stand up and turn our chairs around and move your chairs back a little bit. And move this. Can you get the microphone over there? This one? Yeah. Oh, good. That's fantastic.
You want it next to the other side?
Yeah, right in front, like he's giving a Bhagavatam class. Thank you for that. So if anyone, don't forget to get your temperatures checked. And if anyone needs a face mask, we have one we can make available. Do we have extra face masks in the house for those that didn't come with one?
Hare Krishna, let's see. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
In the back there.
Okay. Hare
Okay,
Krishna,
thank you,
Hare Krishna, how's that?
So moving right along,
Okay,
really appreciate
that's better, yeah.
Mangalananda, was
Hare
fantastic.
Krishna, yeah.
Now we're going to hear from Svarupa Prabhu. Svarup, fantastic devotee. He's also a poet, and which is actually one of the qualities found in the spiritual world. So Svarup joined ISKCON in the summer of 1969 in New York. I know I'm supposed to have my mask on, but I want you to hear about Svarup. He was initiated that same year in Boston, Massachusetts. He worked as Brahmananda's secretary and served with ISKCON Press and BBT, developing the mail order department and answering letters as ISKCON's secretary. And you can find him on Facebook. He posts the most fantastic posts about Srila Prabhupada and very relevant philosophical aspects to understanding Krishna consciousness, as well as his own poetry that we can gain inspiration from. So without further ado, let's give him a first round of applause for coming up all the way from down south.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Svarupa.
Namah Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Prachane Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschati Deshatani. Jai Prabhupada. So I would say my qualification for being here speaking is basically that Siddhanta Prabhu enjoys torturing me, and he knows my dislike for speaking in front of cameras and people, so he somehow coaxes me out of my cave now and then to do just that. Well, thank you very much, Siddhanta. So we're taught to address one another as Prabhu, Master. And the master of all the Prabhus, he is called Prabhupada. So with that said, I'm very happy to be here among all you Prabhus to glorify our Prabhupada. In the fourth canto I was just reading recently, where Maharaj Prithu is instructed by the four Kumaras, and afterwards he tells them that it's impossible to repay a person who brings Krishna consciousness, who brings knowledge of Krishna to humanity. They're the greatest benefactor. And how can you repay the debt to someone who gives you Krishna consciousness? It's impossible. And Prabhupada further explains in the purport that, and explains how in the verse there's a word that means joker, that to even attempt to repay the debt to the guru, to the spiritual master, renders one a laughingstock, a joker, because it's impossible. So, so at the risk of being a laughingstock, here I am trying to glorify Srila Prabhupada with whatever recollections or realizations I have about him. And Prabhupada was he was our ever well-wisher. He was, is, forever will be our ever well-wisher. That's how he signed his letters. And of course, spiritually, but on every level, every aspect of our lives. He was our father. He was our physician. He was a marriage counselor. He was he cared about, his care and concern was for every aspect of our lives. He would end his letters, he would always say, I hope this letter finds you in good health. I hope this letter finds you well. Or, where's Balai? Anyway, like my God, Sister Balai, he would write her a letter, for instance, and at the end he would say, please offer my blessings to your daughter Nandini. So his care and concern for our families, for our health. For an example, here in LA, I remember in the old temple room, one morning Prabhupada was giving a lecture, coughing. Everybody was coughing. And Prabhupada stopped the lecture and said, why? Why is there this coughing? He was concerned. There shouldn't be so much sickness. Are you getting enough to eat? Are you getting enough to sleep? Or you'd see devotees nodding out, falling asleep during class. You become concerned. When he would hear about somebody getting in a car accident, because he would write, to all the temples, please, whoever's driving these vehicles, they should get enough rest. Here's a good example of how Prabhupada, cared so much about our safety and health. The first time we gave him a tour of ISKCON Press was in Boston, the end of '69. We were just getting geared up to print. At the time, Krishna book was in publication. So we were very excited to show Prabhupada all of the machinery, the printing press and the binders and the cameras, and we're running around, and Prabhupada was looking at everything. And he was noticing, and he made a remark afterwards. He said that we shouldn't be wearing loose dhotis or saris around this machinery, because loose clothing would get caught in the machines. No one had even thought of this. So as a result of that, we ended up ordering the ugliest ISKCON Press uniforms imaginable. It's horrible green shirts. But he saw right away, this is a danger. Bardraj, Haribol. All of a sudden, I saw you sitting there. Jai. He was very patient and tolerant, Srila Prabhupada, to say the least. I mean, people would come to him with such absurd questions and ideas. At one point when we published Perfect Questions, Perfect Answers, I was thinking we should do a sequel called Stupid Questions, Perfect Answers, or Silly Questions, Perfect Answers. For instance, there was this one devotee, he was having gender issues, let's just say. And he was from Berkeley, I forget his name, doesn't matter. So he actually approached Prabhupada. He told Prabhupada that he was having a problem to decide whether he wanted to be a man or a woman. So Prabhupada thought for a minute, and Prabhupada said, well, pick one and then join that ashram. What's the big deal? So one morning walk I was on, another god brother, he was having difficulties in his life. I don't know what was going on. But suddenly he says to Srila Prabhupada, Prabhupada, can the soul ever become extinct? I remember hearing that, and we were all taken aback by that question. And Srila Prabhupada looked at him and he said, have you read my book? Have any of you, do any of you read my books? What does it say in my book? What does it say? And I was quick on the draw that morning, so I hit it with, Najayate Mriyate Vakadachin, I am Buddha Bhavita Vanabuya. The soul is neither birth nor death. The Prabhupada went, yes. But to ask that question, I mean, I remember early in the early days, one girl, I think she said to Prabhupada, Prabhupada, on LSD, I saw Krishna. And Prabhupada said, so, you have seen, now you can serve. You know, he would deal with the most absurd situations in such a patient, nurturing way. There's that famous story back in 26 Second Avenue of a drunk walked in the middle of a class, didn't say anything, just staggered in with a couple of rolls of toilet paper, walked up to the front, put him down, turned around, and walked out. And everybody, no one knew what to do. There was silence, just waiting to see what was going to happen. Then Prabhupada broke the silence and said, just see, his devotional service has begun today. You know, he was donating. Prabhupada was very forgiving also. I mean, he set the bar very, very high for us to achieve the highest perfections of prema bhakti, love of God. But he also, he tolerated our inadequacies. He tolerated our deficiencies. He knew how much we were struggling, and he would always encourage. I mean, he made sannyasis, and many sannyasis couldn't keep their vows. And he didn't throw them out or chastise. He let them, he said, okay, go back to householder life and just stay in the association and serve. A good example of his forgiveness was a story that I've told about my friend Jimmy. He became Jamunacharya. We joined together. Well, he joined before me in the summer of '69, and so it was around, I think it was early August when Prabhupada came to New York from L.A. It was just really a stopover he was making because he was on his way to Europe. He went to Hamburg and then London. So he was only to stay in New York 2 or 3 days before the plane took him to Europe. And at that point, we had moved the temple from 26 Second Avenue to 61 Second Avenue, which is basically across the street, 3 blocks up. The joke was we moved uptown. I mean, 26 Second Avenue is between Houston Street and First Avenue, and First Street, and 61 Second Avenue is between 3rd and 4th Street, so uptown 3 blocks. And it was a bigger facility. It was nice, but the thing is, there was no apartment for Prabhupada. 26 Second Avenue, Prabhupada had an apartment, but there was nowhere, no facility for him to stay at 61 Second Avenue. There was just a temple, and then behind the temple was like a little dormitory, a couple of bunk beds. Most of us slept on the floor. In fact, I remember using a Manhattan Yellow Pages as a pillow. You know, we were austere, and then there was a kitchen. So Jimmy, Jamunacharya, my high school friend, his father was very wealthy. And even though they lived in Long Island, where I grew up and I knew Jimmy from, out in Hewlett, the 5 Towns, Long Island, his father owned an apartment in the Boart building on Tudor City Place, which was right across from the United Nations. Very nice apartment. He just owned the lease. And it was empty. So Jimmy asked his father if Prabhupada could stay at the apartment. And Joe Feldman said, oh, okay, he can. So Srila Prabhupada ended up staying at Jamunacharya's father's apartment. And one of the days, Prabhupada was giving darshan. All the devotees walked over there, or went over there to see Prabhupada. And Jamunacharya, a new devotee, that morning he had slipped. He had snuck off and smoked a cigarette. So when he came to the apartment, he refused to go into the living room where Prabhupada was giving darshan. So there was a scuffle at the door. Devotees were trying to come on, Jamunacharya, come in, sit down. He wouldn't come in. And Prabhupada saw the disturbance and said, what's going on? Someone explained to Prabhupada that, Jimmy, this is his father's apartment that you were staying at, and but he broke a principle this morning. He feels really bad. He's just joined last month, and he feels really bad. He says he's too fallen, too contaminated to come. And Prabhupada just stopped there. He yelled out to the door, whatever you have done, I forgive you. Whatever you have done, just come in and join with us. Just join us. So that's the forgiving nature of Prabhupada. Sometimes we'll hear people say, Prabhupada read my mind. He knew what I was thinking. Sometimes I'll post something on Facebook and someone will say in the comments, wow, I was just thinking this yesterday. I needed so much to read this today. There's like a serendipity with each and every one of us, our relationship with Prabhupada. We'll open up a book to a certain page and it'll be exactly what we needed to read that day. or someone will have an experience where they were sitting in a class and Prabhupada glanced at them and they just felt the communication, something happening. I had a very one of those experiences where Prabhupada read my mind, very practical experience. This was, again, we were giving him a tour of the BBT facility. ISKCON Press became Bhaktivedanta Book Trust when it moved to Los Angeles, and I guess it was 72, 73. Anyway, we had a temporary location on Washington Boulevard, 8575 Washington Boulevard, before we moved into Higuera Street. That doesn't even exist anymore, Higuera Street, I guess, that BBT building. Anyway, so we were giving Prabhupada a tour, and at one point, we showed him the mail order department. Prabhupada was asking me some questions about the mail order, how many BTG subscriptions, how many letters we were getting. Now, at the time, someone had mentioned a few days before that, so many letters were coming, and not all the letters were, asking specific questions. Most of the letters were, please send me more information. Do you have a catalog? What books can I order? There was nothing, but I was corresponding with a lot of people throughout the world. But it was getting more and more letters were coming. So someone suggested to me, why don't you just write a form letter? Dear, to whom it may concern, thank you for your interest in Krishna consciousness. Send them a catalog, and that's it. If they're interested, they'll write back. Because in all the books, if you remember, or they still do, it says, if you're interested in the subject matter, write to the secretary. So that was me. I was the secretary. So the letters were coming in from everywhere. So I was pondering, should I make up a form letter? It just didn't sit right with me. So when we were giving the tour and Prabhupada was asking me these questions, suddenly he began to say, so when I was working for Dr. Bose, I was handling the correspondence. And he said, even if the slightest inquiry would arrive, I would answer personally. And I would continue to correspond until they became a customer. There was my answer. He knew my dilemma, he read my mind, and there was my answer, It was just, this is exactly what I needed to hear. So, it solved the problem. No form letters, no question of writing. We're personalists, we're not impersonalists. No doubt about that. So, Prabhupada, again, he was, very, very caring about our health. Funny story about one time Pradumya was bare-chested. It was a warm day. He wasn't wearing a top, and Prabhupada noticed. He said, Pradumya, you're looking very skinny. Are you eating right? And then he said, actually, that's all right. Most of the saintly acharyas in our line were a little bit skinny. Then Narayan also was there. Prabhupada said, Narayan, you look very muscular. You are eating chickens? Right. No, Prabhupada, I would never do that. I would never eat chickens. It just struck everybody very, very funny. Prabhupada also, he stressed cleanliness. There's a good story what happened up in Boston. He was in Boston in the summer of 71, and many people were waiting to be initiated. So many people joined. At the end of 1970, I call it the trifecta. What happened at the end of 1970 was amazing. The Krishna book came out, was finally published. George Harrison's My Sweet Lord hit the airwaves, and the London Radha Krishna Temple album came out. So those three things, it kind of launched ISKCON into the strategy. I mean, suddenly the growth, because I saw it growing from 69, 70, and then after the end of 70, by 1971, so many people were coming. A lot of thanks to George Harrison. I mean, not only was My Sweet Lord his song, they're chanting Hare Krishna, and he helped the devotees produce that beautiful album with Jamuna singing Govindam. We all know the album. But the very first printing of Krishna book was on his $19,000 donation. So George had something to do with all three of those things that happened. So there was tremendous growth going on at that time. But anyway, so in the summer of 71, Prabhupada was in Boston, and I was up there with many other people we had our press in Tiffany Place at the time in Brooklyn, but we came up to Boston, and there was some business we had to do at a bindery in Massachusetts. So Udava and I had to take the press van and go somewhere one morning, but there was a car blocking us in. It was the car that Prabhupada was supposed to take on his morning walk. Someone had this car all ready to go. So I had to get the keys to move the car out of the way so we can get the press van going. Now, I forgot to return the keys. The keys were in my pocket all morning. Unfortunately, when it came time for Prabhupada to go on his morning walk, where are the keys? The keys were nowhere to be found. So some hippie that was going to Temple volunteered. He said, oh, we can use my car. Prabhupada got into this boy's car, with the devotees. First thing he did was run his finger along the dashboard. It was filthy. It was dirty, dust. And it was like giving the white glove treatment, like a drill sergeant. He said, just everything should be cleansed. Like Prabhupada said, clean. Everything should be clean. Everything belongs to Krishna. Everything should be clean. So when I heard that story, I thought it was a wonderful story. It was all my fault that he had to get into that dirty car. But lesson learned, cleanliness is next to godliness, he quoted many times. And he always talked about, deity worship being, that the cleanliness was so important when it came to deity worship. And that he used the word gorgeous, that the deity should be dressed gorgeously, should have gorgeous everything, clothing. So I have a good story. Well, first of all, I want to mention, when it came to what I call close encounters of the blissful kind, being like one-on-one with Srila Prabhupada, there was like a delicate balance that you had to find. Because you'd have to be comfortable enough to deal with Prabhupada and talk to him, but at the same time have that awe and reverence, for a pure devotee. And not forget for 1 minute that, he is a pure devotee. But at the same time, when you're realizing that he's the most confidential servant of God on the earth, he's the sum total of all the demigods, it could be a little unnerving. So there has to be that delicate balance, to know that Prabhupada's not, because sometimes there was a big rate of fall down with his personal servants, and that was the problem. Like, in fact, way back when, in 67, Kirtananda had some difficulties, and Prabhupada said in one letter to Brahmananda, he said, Kirtananda was thinking that his massaging me was keeping me alive. He thought I was dependent upon his cooking and massaging. He didn't realize the relationship between the disciple and the spiritual master. You become puffed up and think that your guru is an ordinary man. That's the mad elephant offense. It's all over. You got to go back to square one. By the way, let me tell a story about how I was named Svarupa. Siddhanta mentioned I started out from day one as Brahmananda's secretary. He recruited me into the service. And so when it came time for my initiation, Srila Prabhupada asked him what he thought. He asked him, what do you think we should name him? So Brahmananda said, well, he's serving as my secretary, so I was thinking Srup Damodar would be a good name. Prabhupada said, oh, Srup Damodar? So if he is Srup Damodar, what is that? You are Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? You are Lord Chaitanya? So he caught him with that one. Anytime I was in Prabhupada's presence, I felt like so clumsy and stupid and awkward, and just, because Prabhupada is so pure. Especially this one time, okay, again, because that's summer 71. So when Prabhupada came to Boston, Svarupa had an idea that, again, there was no real facility for him at the temple at 38 North Beacon Street. It was a big temple. The press was all there. The householders had rooms up in the top. But there was no real place for Prabhupada to live. So Svarupa decided we're going to put him up in a hotel, I think the Holiday Inn. So anyway, Prabhupada lands at the airport, and I was asked to pick up his luggage. So all the devotees went, typical of the greeting at the airport, and apparently, and I picked up the luggage, and I headed for the hotel. But apparently, on the way back to the temple, when Prabhupada asked, what facility, what was happening, what the program was, Svarupa mentioned that, well, we're taking you to a hotel. And Prabhupada said, no, I will not go to a hotel. I don't care where I sleep, I want to stay with the devotees. I'm staying at the temple. So things were, makeshift, prepared. We ended up getting one of the rooms, cleaned out, and ready for Prabhupada. It was just bare. There was nothing in it. So anyway, but I was not aware that this was happening. I went, I was doing my duty. I picked up the luggage. I was heading for the hotel. When I got to the hotel, nobody was there. I expected to see devotees everywhere, flower petals, nothing. It's a ghost town. And, we didn't have cell phones back then. I couldn't call ahead. I didn't know what was happening. So I found the payphone, called up, and Svarupa said, no, Prabhupada's staying here. Bring his luggage here. He had that big steamer trunk that he would travel with, and a couple of other bags. So, I drove back to the temple. It took me a while, a lot of traffic. Excuse me. So apparently, Prabhupada gave darshan, when he first arrived for a while. So when I got to the temple and I started bringing his luggage up the steps, he was on the second floor, I imagined that devotees were still in the room with him. But when I knocked on the door and walked in, he was alone in the room. The darshan was over. Everybody left the room, left him there by himself. And so I'm lugging this big steamer trunk in, and it took me aback when I realized no one's in here. It's just me and Srila Prabhupada. And lugging that trunk in there, and it was so heavy, and I was like, I felt like Jerry Lewis in that movie, The Bellboy, like a clumsy oaf, and I didn't know what to do, what to say. I said, Prabhupada, where should I put this? And he just motioned. He looked at me very amused. And when I walked in, he was looking across the room, straight across, and the only thing on the wall on the other side of the room was a small picture of Krishna, baby Krishna, Makanshore, the butter thief, that Brijbasi and Sons picture. And it was like Prabhupada was in a samadhi, just meditating, and I felt like I broke his trance, oh, here, great. I walk in, you're lugging this trunk, tripping over my feet, tripping over my own tongue, and I disturb a pure devotee's trance, So I asked him, Prabhupada, where do you want the trunk? He motioned, put it up against the wall. I said, do you want me to open it, set up your dictating equipment? He said, no, that's all right. I'm a little bit tired from the trip. I'll begin working tomorrow later. I said, and I said, okay, is there anything else I can do for you? Can I get for you? Then I realized that I entered the room. I had not yet bowed down and offered my obeisances, upon entering a room and leaving. You're supposed to offer your obeisances. So like an idiot, I went, I'm so sorry, Prabhupada. So I hit the floor, and I began going, Namo Vishnu Padaya, and Prabhupada, I can hear Prabhupada laughing. And he interrupted me. He said, okay, thank you very much. So I sat up, on my knees, and Prabhupada looked at me and said, Svarupa Das, I've given you a very nice name. So yes, I really like the name Prabhupada. Then he began quoting verses with Jiva Svarupaya Nitya Krishna Das and Svarupena Vivashvati, different verses. And so how are you? And I had just gotten married a month before. I said, I'm fine, Prabhupada, and thank you for the letter you wrote to me, because after I got married, my wife and I sent him some dakshin money, $50, and he wrote a very nice letter back. And in the letter, he said, so now you are married in Krishna consciousness. That is very nice. But sometimes married life is risky business, because too much affection for the wife, one might forget Krishna. But if both husband and wife remember Krishna, household life becomes Vaikuntha, he wrote. Then he went on to say in that letter, Bhaktivinoda Thakur is in our line. He was a householder, and such a nice household he was, and such nice children he produced. One of them was my Guru Maharaj. So when I was speaking with Prabhupada one-on-one that evening, I said, so Srila Prabhupada, in that letter, you told me I should follow the example of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So does that mean you want me to have as many children as he had? Because what, do you have 10 sons? And Prabhupada said, no. He said, in this age, it's hard enough to maintain a wife and 1 or 2 children. He said, I don't have 10 children. So that was a nice exchange. And we had that night. And there was another time on a morning walk in Los Angeles. I was very fortunate to go on so many walks. I think because I had my own car. I didn't wait to be picked. Karanda would say, you can go, you can go. I was always kind of independent, because I started out as Brahmananda secretary. I worked with ISKCON Press. I always had my own money, my own car. So I guess I was never under the jurisdiction of any like hierarchy, temple presidents or temple commanders, which made me pretty undisciplined, or kind of did what I wanted. So I went on just about, whatever morning walks I wanted to go on. That particular morning, though, Karanda got into this thing where he was buying Rolls Royces. He would buy one for Prabhupada and then sell it and buy another one. So I wanted to ride in the Rolls Royce that morning, so I went along. And on the way there, Prabhupada asked once or twice, said, "What time is it?" And I didn't think, I was sitting in the front, Karanda, some people were sitting in the back. And I didn't think much of it. Then on the way home, again, Prabhupada began asking, "So who has the time? What time is it?" And someone said, "Oh, it's probably 7:40. Someone else said, "I've got 7:45. And someone else said something. And Prabhupada made a remark. He said, "Just see, even in the telling of time, there's individuality." But then I thought for a minute, I turned around and said, "Srila Prabhupada, where's your watch? Don't you have a watch?" He always has a watch, always. So it was confusing. Why is he asking what time it is? I said, "Prabhupada, what's going on? Where's your watch?" And then he explained to me, he said, well, he had just come from Europe, and Shima Sundar had bought him a very expensive watch from Switzerland. But no sooner did he begin wearing it than it broke. And not any watchmaker could repair it. It had to go back to the manufacturer to get fixed. So he was waiting for Shima Sundar to forward the watch back to Los Angeles. So I said, "I'll tell you what, Prabhupada, you can have my watch." So I immediately took my watch off, handed it back to him. He examined it, checked it out, and then he said, "Oh, very nice," put it on his wrist. I know a lot of devotees have watch Leela stories with Prabhupada. There was many instances where there'd be exchanges of watches, of gifts. So I gave Prabhupada my watch that morning. And then about 2 weeks later, Brahmananda was traveling with him as his secretary at the time. Brahmananda saw me right out here on Watsika, called me over and said, "Hey, Prabhupada got his watch back and he asked me to give you yours back." And it smelled so nice. Of sandalwood and mustard seeds, smelled like Prabhupada. So I had with me my watch prasadam. That was so sweet, so nice.
All right, thank you very much. We're going to have to end it here.
Best is yet to come. Do I get more time
in the afternoon from 2:30 to 3? Can you do that?
I can do that.
Can you
See
save
you
it
all
for
later,
there?
everybody.
Let's hear it for Svarupa Prabhu. Wonderful stories. Fantastic. Thank you so much. So don't forget, 2 o'clock the afternoon session starts. We'll have Mangalananda playing from 2 to 2:30. Svarupa again, Prabhu, from 2:30 to 3. And then we'll have more memories that we're going to see right now on the TV. Never before seen interviews talking about Srila Prabhupada. So let me get the lights. And everybody stay tight.
thing that stands out the most in my mind of the classes that I heard was, for some reason, this vision of Srila Prabhupada sitting on the Vyasasan and referring to a painting which was just in front of him on a wall. And it was a painting of Srimati Radharani offering tulsi leaves to the lotus feet of Krishna. And in the background you see the figures of the gopis sort of looking through the trees, looking on. And so Prabhupada was talking about that painting and how Srimati Radharani is serving Krishna. And the gopis are assisting Srimati Radharani in her service to Krishna. And other gopis are assisting those gopis. And Prabhupada raised his finger and he said, so this is our philosophy, that we are the servants of the servants of the servants. And the further down the line you go, the sweeter that service becomes. So I remember so vividly how Srila Prabhupada raised his finger, moved his finger down and said, the further down the line you go, the sweeter that service becomes.
The only thing was when I got initiated, he asked me, what are the 4 regulative principles and how many rounds do you chant, will you chant? And I told him the 4 regulative principles, and then I told him I would chant 16 rounds. And then he said, are you sure? And I said, yes, Srila Prabhupada. And then he started laughing. And he said, I'm asking you if you're insured, because you have a spot on your face. I have a mole on my face here, and when I was younger, it was darker. And he said, you have a spot on your face, and once there was a movie star with a spot on her face, and she had it insured for a lot of money. And then he just started laughing, and everyone was laughing. He was just chuckling, and then he said, Krishna consciousness is your only insurance.
Another time, I asked him, what do you think about psychotherapy? What do you think about analysis? And he said, I have some appreciation for it. He said, one of my children came back from college and was tapped his forehead. He wasn't right in the head. And so at that time in Calcutta, there were 2 wings to the hospital. There was a British wing and a Hindu wing. And he said, I spent a lot of money sending my son to the British wing to get help from a therapist from England. And I asked him, how did it work? And he said, for some time it did. He said he was, better, normal. And then he said, one day he left home and I never saw him again. So that kind of candid response to what might have been an impertinent question says to me that this was someone who had no guile. He was not hiding behind some kind of a facade of, Jagat Guru. He was a warm person who, if you asked him a question honestly and legitimately, he was there for you. He would answer your question.
Then the first time I actually got to see him was in Atlanta, where I had moved soon after reading that Back to Godhead. And he was only going to have a short layover in the Atlanta airport, maybe 2 hours, and so we didn't try to bring him to the temple, but the temple president, who was Balavanta Prabhu, and his wife Balavi, and Tara Dasi and Jamanjaya came up from Tallahassee, and we rented a VIP room at the airport, and I got to make a cushion for him because we didn't want him to have to sit directly on the, who knows how clean they were, the seats. And so I was very excited about that. And then when he finally came, I was just completely satisfied. This was just to catch a glimpse of him was the satisfaction of everything that I had hoped, but far more so. And so there were a few people that we had told he was coming, and as many people as could crowd into this one room, and some guests. And one of the most important things that I remember from that talk was there was an Indian man there who was not coming to the temple, but somehow the temple had figured out how to reach out to him and brought him to have darshan with Srila Prabhupada. But he was a scientist, and so Prabhupada was talking with him, just chatting, and he asked the man, what kind of science? And he says, we do experimentation on animals. And I noticed that Prabhupada was very unplussed. He was just completely composed, and he said, what animals? And the man said, oh, cats mainly. And again, Prabhupada was just as cool as you could imagine. And he said, all the animals don't get a chance? And I could tell how he was very sarcastic, and I had never seen this in such a exalted person. I had never known that sarcasm could still be helpful to somebody. And you could see in the man, it just really helped him to be a little contemplative at least. This was amazing to me.
What I was talking to you before we started recording, I was mentioning how when I had jaundice or hepatitis, contagious, it's jaundice that you get from water basically, or from contaminated food, but in India it's not uncommon. And I had jaundice and I went to Srila Prabhupada and I said, Srila Prabhupada, I told him I had jaundice, I said, so what should I eat? And Srila Prabhupada said, only take Krishna Prasadam. And I was just, oh, okay, Srila Prabhupada, fine, but what shouldn't I eat? And he said, don't take anything that's not Krishna Prasadam. I just thought, that was like classic Prabhupada, kind of the way he could just answer in the most simple way. But what was there in that answer is Prabhupada's amazing wit. His extremely, dry sense of humor, but very, very deep humor. Like, I remember when we were walking in Vrindavan, and someone said to Srila Prabhupada, Prabhupada, these devotees from Los Angeles, they're only taking Ekadasi preparations. And Srila Prabhupada said, oh, advancement. Like that. And then everyone crowded close to her. Advancement, Srila Prabhupada? And he said, yes. And then somebody was trying to play the pundit, says, but Srila Prabhupada, it says in the Bhagavad Gita that grains, let's see how it is. Rains come from sacrifice, and grains are produced from rains, and all living entities subsist on food grains. And Srila Prabhupada said, his answer is, he said, very straight-faced, that is for those who are passing 7. So he said, that is for animals. And then, so everyone, that's amazing. So then, when Prabhupada got to Los Angeles, I wasn't there, but I heard the whole thing, and that Prabhupada had said about only animals, basically the summary is only animals need to take food grains. But I thought, Prabhupada's putting them on, and they don't know it. He's just completely playing with them, and they have no idea. And then he went to Los Angeles, and then they said, Srila Prabhupada, these persons, they only take Ekadasi preparations. It was the same references that happened in Vrindavan on the walk. And then Srila Prabhupada said, oh, why is that? And they said, and then they were shocked, and they said, but Srila Prabhupada, they say that only animals need to take food grains. And he said, I take food grains. Do I look like an animal? But I was so positive when I heard this incident. And I knew something of Srila Prabhupada. I think Prabhupada's playing with them. He's putting them on, and just in a very straight, way of speaking. They have no idea that he's joking with them. And I saw that. I saw Prabhupada's humor on many occasions, and it's not like a rowdy kind of humor. It's a very philosophical and almost like he could say this, and just very, very wonderful sense of humor. Extremely, charming, witty, everything, but you would not see it in a boisterous way.
Because what I had heard is that this one devotee had told me that he told Prabhupada that I was lazy. And so I was really brokenhearted, you know, that I would think that Prabhupada would think I was lazy. Not that I'm not lazy, because now I know I know. But then I didn't feel like I was lazy. And I was really angry and also felt hopeless because there was just no way, you know, that I was going to please Prabhupada or do anything right, you know, at that point. So anyhow, Srila Prabhupada was there, and I went up to his desk. I had the courage. I mustered it up, and I said to Srila Prabhupada, I just folded my hands, and Prabhupada came up and smiled. And so I knew I could speak. And I said, Srila Prabhupada, and I got out a few words, and then I just started crying completely, like, whoa! I mean, it was deep crying, like I should have been in therapy or something, you know. But Prabhupada sat there, and I was crying, Prabhupada, I'm a woman. There's no way I can please you. I'm a woman, and I have children, and they say I'm lazy now. And Srila Prabhupada, at that point, when he heard that, then I saw his arm go back, and he did this smile. It was like the universe or something. And when he did that smile, I just, oh my gosh, you know, how could he think that was a smile thing, you know? Because I was so sad. But that smile was like, he embraced me, you know, with that smile. And then he said to me, he came close and he goes, are you reading my books? That's what he said to me. Are you reading my books? And I was reading his books, because that's one thing that moms can do, okay? And when you're breastfeeding, everything is you can read books, okay? So I was reading, I was all the way up to the book that he was finished with, you know, and at that time it was probably like 7th canto, 6th canto or something, 5th canto, I don't even know. But it wasn't very much. But the thing was I read them. And so I said to Prabhupada, yes, Srila Prabhupada, I am reading your books. And he said, then you are pleasing me. Yeah. And I mean, you could imagine, and I just was so grateful, and I just felt so much love. That's why I say the unconditional love changed my life.
Prabhupada was at that time translating the 6th canto, and he was in this section with Ajamil. Now, of course, nobody had a book yet on the 6th canto. It hadn't come out yet. He's working on it. But Prabhupada's part of his entourage, who he traveled with, apart from his servant, who was Shruti, I think, he had this boy named Nitai. Prabhupada had 2 Sanskrit assistants, Pradyumna and Nitai. And they were both grihastas. They both had a child. So they couldn't do it all the time. They would take, one would go for a few months, and the other one would come and replace him, and he'd go back and spend, and then in this way it was a nice system. So this time, Nitai was the Sanskrit assistant. So he wrote the verse on the chalkboard so that we could all respond and chant it, you know, as Prabhupada taught. And Prabhupada sitting on the Vyasasana. And then after a while, men and women had chanted, Prabhupada told them translation. So he's the only one that has the translation, because it's in manuscript form, you know. Prabhupada, he would get the tapes from Prabhupada's dictaphone and transcribe what Prabhupada had translated the night before. Then when they get that, they would then send that to the BBT. And this is how the process of making a book would evolve. So Prabhupada tells him, read the translation, and he has these papers. And he begins to read the translation to that one verse. And it is the part of the Bhagavatam when Ajamil sees the Yamadutas coming for him. So I'll paraphrase it because I don't know the exact thing, but in essence, he's reading the translation. Ajamil seeing these Yamadutas, fierce-looking creatures, in fear, he calls out for his son. And he says, Narayan, Narayan, Narayan. We didn't think anything of it. It sounded appropriate. But Prabhupada caught it. And Prabhupada took the microphone and he said, did I say 3 times? And we realized Prabhupada's talking to Nitai, who is sitting down there from the other. Prabhupada said, did I say 3 times? And Nitai wouldn't answer. He just kind of bowing his head and he's not saying anything. Prabhupada asked him again, a second time, did I say 3 times? He's still not answering. And we realized there's something wrong here, something going on, but we don't know what it is. And then Prabhupada leaned back on his Vyasa-san and he says, I did not say 3 times. So this is the 3rd time. At that point, Nitai confesses. He says, no, Prabhupada, you didn't say 3 times. And then Prabhupada said the most wonderful thing. He leaned forward in the Vyasa-san and he said, why 3 times? Once is sufficient. And when he did that, his hand was like a mudra. Once is sufficient. The whole temple erupted. Hari Bol! He said it with such potency and conviction that, once is sufficient. Once chanting. He said, why 3 times? And the whole thing made sense. And then Prabhupada showed a side of compassion, a side of him which is compassionate. He could have ripped into Nitai and blasted him, but he didn't. He just said, don't change anything that I have written. And that's all. And he went back and sat back and he gave the Bhagavatam class. And it was all about the glories of chanting the holy name. But that little incident there, I'll never forget it because it was a teaching moment,
That same year, 74, I was married. I got Brahmin initiation because Prabhupada actually stopped us from taking Brahmin initiation too soon. They had written a recommendation letter to Prabhupada. Prabhupada said, you are going too fast. So that was probably October. We had to do a Brahmin test. There was 10 questions, what the significance of the Guru. And then instead of being initiated 2nd in October, it was November. So then we got Brahmin initiation. And then we went in 76, we went to meet Srila Prabhupada again. And there was another wonderful realization for me after Srila Prabhupada installed the Krishna Balaram deities in New Mayapur. Because it was like this, everyone was always visiting all the temples. Whenever Prabhupada would be in Europe, he'd be in France. All the devotees from Europe went to France. And at that time, Srila Prabhupada had been quite sick. But because Bhagavan was really begging to please Prabhupada, you come, we have the deities to be installed. And so Prabhupada came, and there was three incidences. One was an amazing experience when Prabhupada was bathing the deities, Krishna and Balaram. And there might be a picture of this, but it's not a very, very well-known picture. Srila Prabhupada was first bathed with the big conch shells. He would bathe Lord Balaram, and then we had to bathe, and they were all about the same size. So they were like 3 instead of 2, Krishna and Balaram and Srila Prabhupada. So like friends. And then when Prabhupada had to bathe Krishna, he had to lean forward to bathe Krishna in front of Balaram, and he put his hand on Balaram's shoulder and then bathe Krishna like this. So when I saw this, I said, wow, this is spiritual world. They're the three friends together, Krishna, Balaram, and Srila Prabhupada. Then a little later we had the big feast. Well, first we had the initiation again, 76, and I had one friend. She said, oh, how am I supposed to do? I said, you pay dandavats like this, and you say all these things, because I just had it myself. She said, are you sure? Because in those days we were not doing dandavats anymore. It wasn't allowed. I said, I'm sure I did it. You should do it. And when she did that, actually, I was looking at Prabhupada while she was paying her full dandavats in front of Prabhupada. And Prabhupada had this big smile on his face, and there was a picture made of that. So when she got up, I said, Prabhupada was very pleased.
So my service, 1974, I was basically taking care of the cows, but they had me bodyguard at Prabhupada's house from 9 o'clock at night till 4 in the morning, right? Gave me a shotgun, 38 pistol, you know. I'm standing in front of Prabhupada's house. It's ridiculous, you know, how can we protect Prabhupada? He's protecting us in every way. So I'm standing there in front of Prabhupada. In those days we call it rank and file devotees. You know, I wasn't a GBC, I wasn't a temple president, I wasn't a sannyasi, I was a bhakta, right? With two shoes that didn't match, you know. Hippie, penniless, not able or willing or desiring to go anywhere. But I'm in front of Prabhupada's house, and at 1 o'clock in the morning, Prabhupada's light would go on. And then I would hear him speak. First I thought he was listening to a Prabhupada tape, then I realized, well, that's Prabhupada, he's dictating. He's translating the Bhagavatam, 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm outside. I never talked to Prabhupada, you know. So I'm out there in front of the house, and it starts to rain a little bit. So going down on the side of the house, there's a driveway, and underneath the house there's a garage. So I went down, opened up the garage door, blah, 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 and I went standing in the garage door doing my guard duty. And I didn't know that Prabhupada could come down through the house to the garage, which he did. You, Prabhupada. Prabhupada. Oh my God. Offered obeisances. I said, Prabhupada, how can I serve you? You know, what do you say? You know, here's Prabhupada. Now Prabhupada is like a mountain. Stillness. His senses are not, you know, I think I told you that. I saw one video clip where somebody wanted to show me something on the clip, and they put it fast forward, and there were all these devotees around, and they were all like this, and Prabhupada was just like this. So that's what the scene was like there. Prabhupada was like that mountain, and I was just like, you know, crazy, like which. So when I asked him, Prabhupada, how can I serve you? He went like this. You can go where I won't go. Can you hear his voice? You can go where I won't go. So Prabhupada had just flown from Tokyo to San Francisco to Los Angeles to Dallas to Chicago to New Orleans to New York to Pittsburgh, and then he was going back to New York. He was going to fly to London, go to India, and he was traveling all of 1974, right? Meanwhile, I didn't have any means to go anywhere, you know. I said, Prabhupada, where won't you go? He said, to the future. I was like, what does he want me to build a time machine? He wants me to go to the future? How do you get to the future, you know? And then he said, and how you treat the people there, you show them how Krishna loves them. And I just went like this. I couldn't process what he just told me to do. Of course, it's an instruction for all of us. It's an instruction, go where I won't go, and how you treat the people there, show them how Krishna loves them. And while my eyes were closed, he left. He went back upstairs. When I opened my eyes, he was gone. That was it. He just laid that on me and split. You know, that's like 47, 48 years ago. Okay.
I do remember one thing he said, that here in Los Angeles, many people go surfing. The devotees were talking about surfing, and then Prabhupada underneath his breath, because I was right there, and I could hear Prabhupada very clearly. And he was saying something underneath his breath, you know, and I'm like listening, you know, and he was like, suffers. So then the devotees, the sannyasis that were there close, they said, Prabhupada, no, it's not suffers, it's surfers, Prabhupada, they're surfers. They're surfers, and they go in the water, you know, and they ride the board. And they were trying to explain this to Srila Prabhupada. And then Prabhupada said, yes, he said, and they will ride the waves just like the dolphins, and they go right through the waves just like the dolphins. So they are getting ready for their next body. And we all just laughed, and Prabhupada's little hands were all pink, and they were so beautiful, and we were just so blown away by his exuberance and his vision. He had such vision. And sometimes when you go to the airport, okay, they would complain, the employees, they would complain, you guys leave all these petals on the floor, we gotta, you know, sweep them up, it's a big thing, you know. There's like 200 of you that come to the airport and got all these flower petals everywhere. Anyway, so they told Prabhupada that, right? And Prabhupada said, He said, so they are not complaining for all the cigarette butts on the floor, you know. And Prabhupada did so many things at the airport, you know. He would sit down waiting for his flight, and, you know, we'd be there like around him. And, you know, this lady that was there visiting our temple, she was a nurse, and she was, you know, a little eccentric. And anyway, she loved Prabhupada, so she was there, you know, seeing Prabhupada off. And so a few other sannyasis were sitting there on the airport bench, you know, with Srila Prabhupada waiting for the flight, and Prabhupada had his cane, and he was like this, you know, just waiting for us, looking around, you know. And then he was looking, he looked at the nurse, and then he looked at the devotees sitting on the chair, all the guys. He actually told them to leave so that this lady could sit down. Okay? Prabhupada was the perfect gentleman.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So our last portion of the this Memorial Day, remembering Srila Prabhupada, will be from Shruti Rupa Devi Dasi. She lives in Alachua, Florida, and so she wasn't able to fly here, so I interviewed her a week ago, and this is her story about serving Srila Prabhupada, mostly in Vrindavan, as a cook, and she has some really far-out stories. So this is the last 15 minutes of the morning program, so please pay attention, and then we'll have Artik led by Bhardaraj Prabhu. And at that time, just a little housekeeping, what we can do is just move the chairs to either side of the room so we can have room to dance for Lord Krishna. So without further ado, let us hear from Shruti Rupa Devi Dasi. So I want to welcome Shruti Rupa Devi Dasi to our 30th anniversary of Prabhupada's Memorial Day weekend. And today we're focusing on the topic of Prabhupada's lessons that he taught us and qualities that Prabhupada exhibited while you were in his association. So Shruti Rupa, if a lot of devotees don't know, that are in the temple room here and that are watching online, she had the good fortune, she had the good karma to come in contact with Prabhupada's books when she was only 15 years old in Coconut Grove, Florida. Her mother bought some books from a devotee preaching in a mall in Miami. And then the devotees mentioned that they were having a love feast, and Shruti Rupa, who was already a vegetarian at that age, decided, well, let me go there and check the feast out. Evidently, a year later or so, she worked at a vegetarian cafe called, in Key West, Florida, Sri Krishna's Rainbow Cafe. And I'd like to see if that place is still existing. But in any case, she did finally join the temple, and when she was 18, got to leave the house at that age. That was 1973. But her association with Prabhupada really culminated in 1973 there, where she was doing seva, cooking for Prabhupada on the, with Daivi Shakti overseeing everything, cleaning Prabhupada's rooms, and cooking 73, 74, 75, all the way up to when Prabhupada left us in 77. So that's a brief bio of Shruti Rupa, but Shruti Rupa, take us back to, and we're gonna, the session for today is that you'll tell one or two stories for the morning session, and then we'll come back in the afternoon and have another one or two stories and your realizations of those times with Prabhupada. So take us to the time that you were, what comes to mind for you that is relevant, that the devotees can appreciate, some story that is top of your mind.
Hare Krishna, thank you. Can I just sidetrack before the story and say what my intention is here and my heartfelt desire?
Sure.
That, yeah, these are wonderful stories, wonderful time, but I'm hesitant to put myself out there in that light because Prabhupada couldn't be everywhere at all the time. So the few that were there at the right time, at the right place, not that they were special or they were chosen, is that he gave and he expected them to give. To give his standard, to teach, to show, to pass on what he was in that moment in time giving. So that's my intention here for you today. And these are not my stories. I want you to take them as yours and to use them in your life. And some of them are details, but most of it is principles. And these principles is what changes our lives by following. And when we do that with all sincere presence, Prabhupada is present within that, because that's the legacy that he's given us. So that is my intention for you today. And on that note, one of my favorite stories, because it's such a great lesson, is distributing Prabhupada's remnants. This was Mayapur in 1977, when I would, when Prabhupada would finish eating, he would sit there and generally have a toothpick and pick his teeth, and he would, converse with you, say something to you. Sometimes he would point to where you were cleaning because you're taking the bowls and putting them back on the plate. Okay. So this one day, as he was sitting there and he was watching me, I was putting the bowls back on his tali because he took them all off and I'm cleaning up. And he looks at me and he says, when you distribute, because that was the program, you took his plate, you went downstairs, you emptied it onto another tali, and you'd walk around and you would distribute to the devotees. And the devotees in that one building were lined up on 3 floors waiting. I mean, everybody knew at the time that Prabhupada's remnants would be coming out. And I personally grew to dislike this part of my service deeply, because it took about an hour of my day that I really didn't have to give to the whims of, no, I want that. No, I don't want that. No. They were so discriminating on what was what and what they could eat. And it would take long to make a decision. They'd converse. There was usually groups of 2, 3, 4 on all 3 floors. So I'd have to go these floors, so on and so forth. I never complained. I didn't say anything problem, but inside it was eating me up. So this one day he's sitting there watching me and I'm putting everything on. And he says, I want you to mix. You mix everything before you distribute. And I said, okay. So nothing more said. I went downstairs and I took everything, put it on a plate. Mix could mean many things to many people, because where I was coming from, the intensity that I had with this service, I just not only mixed it, I kneaded it with the ball of my hand like it was dough till it was an unrecognizable, discolored. The shukta was in there, the kheer was in there, the sweets, the frieds, sandesh, the rice, everything was mashed to this unrecognizable heat. So I went about, the devotees were in shock. And they were like, whoa, what's going on? And I'm like, very, cavalier, well, it's what Prabhupada said to do. And, and so I would give, and they just wanted just little. No, just little. And so the next day they saw it was the program, and so less came. The next day less came. Another day, nobody was out there. I mean, not a single soul was in those halls. And I could just, I'd be done in, minutes. And I had my day, I could continue into Prabhupada's service because it wasn't just lunch and then you go back and sleep. It was like, you never stopped. You hardly slept. It was engagement. There was always more to do. So, but to tell you that I ate that, I would go down and eat the whole plate. And it was just absolutely nectarine, divine. And even each day I did it and I knew that no one was going to be there. I continued to do the same intensity and the same mashing to an unrecognizable heat. And I had to answer to nobody but me. And I'd invite my girlfriends, they would come, or, anybody there, the Panchajanya, Janani Vas, and the brahmacharis, they were, a few of them, they would take, and it was relishable. It was absolutely relishable. So, yeah, so what is that principle is that Prabhupada honored prasadam. He didn't just eat, and it wasn't he looking for something fried today or something sweet today or something, delectable. When Prabhupada ate, Prabhupada relished, Prabhupada honored. Sometimes you'd go into his room to bring in a chapati or something, a refill, and he'd have his eyes closed. His eyes would be closed, and it was so apparent when you walked in, because you'd come in quietly, not to disturb, and Prabhupada would be relishing. And so it brought in a whole nother focus. And Prabhupada ate in silence. He didn't eat with anyone. If somebody had, in the beginning, he would just give them something and let them go. But he didn't have anyone, maybe it was a special occasion of something, but on a daily basis, Prabhupada ate alone. He ate alone and he ate in silence, and he could take up to 45 minutes to finish his thali. And that is a very big lesson. There was just one quick thing that I learned from that I had heard a story that Bhaktisiddhanta said was, he told his disciple, if you could just learn to honor prasadam, you would become a pure devotee. So that's just layered onto what Prabhupada taught, that, again, he was showing by example, and that's what he wanted us to do, to recognize the importance that Krishna is in everything. And Mahaprasad means mercy. It means great mercy. And then taking it from the pure devotee, it's called Maha Prasad. So this was a blessing, this was a gift, and we weren't honoring this. So Prabhupada had to take it back down to ground zero to get our attention.
Good start for the morning. Can you then go on to your second anecdote that you can share with us?
My second one, I'll tell you about a story that seems contradictory, because the instruction was given to Palika, and I was with Palika cooking. This was in Vrindavan, 1976. We were a team at that time, she and I. We become quite close and traveled together and cooked for Prabhupada. We were inseparable, to the point one time Prabhupada said to me, "You make very nice duplicate of Palika." And I told him that people confuse us or mistake. I used the word mistake. I said, they mistake me. And he went on to say how there's no such thing as a mistake. And I'm ashamed to say I cannot remember what he said, because he explained, because when you're in Prabhupada's presence and it's just you get kind of, for me, I just would get lost in just looking at him and observing him. And, I wasn't one to chit chat or ask or questions. I just did as he told and understood. And so at any rate, we were a team, and this is about ants. And so, like I said, when Prabhupada would finish, he would sit there always. He didn't get up and just go wash and go on. He sat there and spent that time with you after you cooked, and he would interface with you on whatever he wanted to say. So he was sitting there, and he would always have a toothpick afterwards, and he would sit there very peaceful, very soft mood. after eating. And so she's putting the katoris on. And I have to tell you, I don't know what it is, but when Prabhupada, not during his eating, but when Prabhupada would finish, ants would descend. They would totally descend on his little table all over. And so she was picking up, and there's rice, like I said, chapatis here and there, and she's wiping the ants away. And Prabhupada's there looking at her, and now she's handing me things, and I'm, gathering up the items. And Prabhupada's looking at her, and he goes, and he taps his table, and he goes, I don't know if you can hear that, but he
Sure.
tapped his table, and he said, if you simply, he said, they will go. He said, it's best to kill as little as possible. So I'm standing there and I'm thinking, I got that. I had a file, that whatever Prabhupada said or whatever I observed or saw, it went in that file, and that was for me to pull from, in service, so you didn't make mistakes and you didn't, do the wrong thing, and you knew what he wanted, because that was to be in Prabhupada's service. That's what you had, like he said, the first class servant, Prabhupada wouldn't have to ask. You know what he wants and you do it. And Shruti Kirti tells stories where Prabhupada would just look at the window and Shruti Kirti knew to go pull the curtain or knew to open it, or he would just do this and he would know. And so these are the things. So I had that file going on. So when Prabhupada said that, it was a big aha. So I had that down. So that was probably September 76. December, I was down in Bombay. And forgive me, I'm old school. It was Bombay for us then. And we were going to I wouldn't call it a festival. We were going to an event. Excuse me. It was on the Bhagavad Gita. It was a Bhagavad Gita conference down in Varda. And there was a host, Mr. Bajaj, that was hosting Prabhupada and us. So I went ahead, and I think there was Riksha Raj then, and Giri Raj, and Javataka Maharaj, and Aditya. She was Giri Raj's secretary. She was the only other lady. And we went on a train, and I got there ahead maybe 2 days before Prabhupada to get everything set up and to speak to the host and so on and so forth. So I'm there, and I'm heading up all the cooking and things, and so I don't know if it was the first day, second day, third day, I don't know. But as I'm cleaning, and Prabhupada's sitting there in the usual manner after eating, and he's picking his teeth, and he's watching me, and sometimes he even points. When you miss, he would point on the table where to wipe. So that day, inevitably, the ants descended, and they were all over the table, starting to come everywhere. And I'm thinking, aha, I got this. I got this. So Prabhupada's sitting there watching, and I'm picking up katoris, picking the rice, the crumbs. They were even on his cloth, and I would shake his cloth, and it would kind of jump the chapati crumbs, and I would pick them up, and so on and so forth. I was pretty bold in my, what needed to be done. I only saw what needed to be done, and I did it. And so at any rate, so that day, there were ants everywhere, and I'm thinking quite pleased with myself. So I start going, and Prabhupada's picking his teeth, and he goes, what are you doing? And so I look up at Srila Prabhupada sitting there, and I'm like, oh, Srila Prabhupada, I'm making the ants go. And you could see that I was obviously quite pleased with myself. And I said, I'm making the ants go. And Prabhupada looked at me and he said, simply wipe them away. I couldn't even look up. I couldn't look up. I was at the table, and when he said, simply wipe them away, I just looked down. I was just stunned. I was absolutely stunned. And I knew it took time to deal with, to process it. I had to understand what he was teaching me. What was that about me? And upon reflection, I realized it was my pride. And that's what he did with me when I surfaced that pleasure within myself, that I knew something now. And I would please Prabhupada. He was like, no, he wasn't going for it.
Very good. Good realization. I want to cut that pride.
And that's, that's a lifelong of reflection. It's not just one lesson in one moment, one vignette of time. These are things that stay with us, and these are things for you to take into your life, to help us balance and reflect. Where's that coming from? The way I just responded, or where, is that ego? Is that pride? Is that a loving place? I mean, this is how, we learn. This is how we grow.
Shruti Rupa ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. In 5 minutes, we're going to have the arti. And I'll tell you one quick little story in reference to Shruti Rupa telling us about the toothpicks. Srila Prabhupada was on a plane. This was told to me by Vyasaki, that Prabhupada was on a plane and he had just finished his lunch. Usually after Prabhupada takes off in the plane, they say, oh, prasad. So they take the thali out and serve Prabhupada the prasadam. And his servants were behind him. So he had finished his prasadam, and he took out a toothpick. And he was, again, putting the toothpick in his teeth. And his servant behind him saw that, oh, he's like taking a clue, oh. And so he got to be thinking that I got to go clean my teeth now. So he gets his shaving kit with his toothbrush and toothpaste, and he gets up, rises up from his seat. Prabhupada sees, he says, oh, where are you going? He said, well, I'm going to clean my teeth, Prabhupada. I see that you're, the toothpick. He said, sit down. This toothpick is to get every last morsel of Krishna prasadam. He said, you clean your teeth before you eat, not after. So this is how Krishna conscious Srila Prabhupada is, honoring prasadam to every last bit between our teeth. So if we can just get prepared for Arti, led by Bhardaraj Prabhu. Bhardaraj, are you here? I hope he is here. And as a little housekeeping thing, if we can move the chairs to this one side or the other. You don't necessarily need to fold them up, but just make room in the middle for devotees chanting.